this is AndyTube. In this video I'm going to talk about the stitch length regulator on Stella, a Singer Model 237. Now, by this age of machine, 1970, Singer was calling it a stitch length regulator, even though the actual regulator inside the machine is still called a feed regulator because it regulates the feed on the machine. And when we're talking about feed, we're talking about really the feed dog. You know what? I think I'll take this needle out before I poke myself. There we go. I didn't realize I still had that in there. Take the needle plate off. So that's what we're talking about really, is this feed dog that either pulls the fabric under the needle, or if you're in reverse, it pushes the fabric back under the needle. And the feed is really a complicated system on the machine. Everybody talks about the needle and the tension, but the main thing that makes it an automatic machine is the feed. The feed moves the fabric under the needle. The needle really just goes up and down, whether you're in straight stitch or if I put it over in, if I put it over in a zigzag stitch, it goes up and down. That part is very simple. So what controls the length of the stitch of the thread is how far the feed dog pulls the fabric underneath the needle between each up and down movement. So if you put the stitch length regulator all the way down at the longest stitch, which is about 6 per inch or 4 some millimeter, every time the needle's going up, it's pulling the fabric about 4 millimeters before the needle comes down. And then it oscillates down, comes back up, and picks up the fabric and pulls it along under the presser foot to make the next stitch. If I put the regulator at 12, about 12 stitches per inch, now we're talking about a little over 2 millimeters. So you see that the feed dog moves a lot shorter length between strokes. And if you want to darn or free motion, and you can kind of neutral out this setting, so the feed dog, let me try a little bit more here, the feed dog is kind of just basically sitting there going up and down, right? So that's why feed on the sewing machine is so important. And don't feel bad for not realizing it. I didn't realize it, because really all you ever see is the feed dog and this little handle that sticks out here that sets how long the stitch is, right? Stitch length regulator. And on this machine there's a cover plate that has a stitch indicator plate for you to help set your length, 6, 7, 8, 10, etc. And on many machines, including this one, when you go up, you're reversing the motion of the feed dog, and it's going to pull the fabric back under the needle towards you. So it's kind of like you're sewing backwards, but really you're feeding the fabric forward. But there's a lot of other parts in the machine that make the feed work. Before I open it up and show you these, I'm just going to show you some parts from another machine. These parts are from a 503 Slant-O-Matic Rocketeer, but this is actually the feed regulator. this device right here. And the one on this machine is very similar, as you will see. And even on this, where the service guide and the instruction manual talk about a stitch length regulator and setting the stitch length, on the parts manual, this is still called a feed regulator, like 100 years before. Feed regulator. So in this machine, from the top horizontal arm bar down to the bottom of the machine, connected to the feed rocker, this is called the forked feed connection. And if you've seen some of my videos, you've maybe heard me talk about this. There's a little kind of eccentric thing on the arm shaft that when it turns goes in here, kind of makes this lifting, rocking motion. Well, the feed regulator fits right on a slide block that's on this. And there's a hinge screw that goes right through the forked feed connection, and it allows, oops, oh boy, this is really stiff. It allows this slide block to swivel. Let me see if I can loosen that up a little bit. I pulled these out of my parts drawer so I could show you, because I figured, oh man. Okay, well that's not moving. Okay, never mind that. But it does hinge or swivel on here, and the slide block goes on to or in the slide area of the feed regulator. Okay, and then there's a feed regulator hinge screw that goes through the machine below the hand wheel, and it goes through a hole in the casting, and it screws into the regulator to hold it. And on this particular one, there's a big spring here, so when you tighten it, you can adjust it, and the spring holds whatever tension you've set on it. And the idea is that this lifts and rocks on that horizontal arm shaft according to where the slide is in the regulator. If you come out here, oh, you know what? I rigged up there's usually a feed regulator screw stud that goes through a adjusting thumb nut into the machine and fits right in this hole on the regulator. And that's like this lever you see sticking out here, right? That's a screw stud that goes right through, and when you adjust it up to a higher number, it puts more movement on this, so you make a longer stitch. Or when it's down, you're making the longer stitch. And when you're up, it's making a shorter stitch. And when you go in reverse, it makes it actually reverse motion in the movement. And that regulator goes along the slide on this side, but it's anchored to the machine by the hinge screw that holds it in place. So it's kind of like up on the top in my video about the zigzag slide, where the slide was sitting like this and the slide block was in here, and when you move the lever in the arc, down here it was straight stitch, and up at the top it was a full zigzag, if you remember. It's that same kind of idea. And the feed regulator and the slide system, that came into place a long time before zigzag was around. So that's kind of what it looks like sitting in there. Okay? Give you an idea. So, the reason that I want to look at this is because it's very stiff. It's very firm to move. I really have to apply a lot of pressure. Not as much as this one, where this is almost frozen in place. But it's still, it's too much. I don't want the user, whoever ends up with this, to have to, you know, every time they want to change a stitch length. And the other thing that most of Singer's feed regulator or stitch length regulators have is this kind of a knurled knob that goes on the end of the screw stud, that's called like the adjusting thumb nut. And usually when you twist it to the left, you move a piece on the regulator out so you can slide it up and down, and then you can, if you want, like this is 12, you can twist it to the right and you can press this piece up against the indicator plate to hold it there, so it doesn't move around. And if you come to an end of a seam and you flip it up to reverse a couple stitches, you can flip it back down and it's going to stop where you locked it in, locked quote unquote. But this one has a little plastic piece with a couple of points on each side, and the points are supposed to be like this and press against the indicator plate. But these points are turned up and down, so I can't really lock in a stitch, because if I try, it just pushes the whole device in the hole, in the slot there. So I need to get that straightened out, and I need to find out, wow, you know, why is this so stiff? I don't want it this stiff, okay? So, usually when you're going to work on the feed regulator, you're going to want to take off the arm cover. In my case, I have 3 screws, one at the front and 2 here on the back. I've already got those out, so we'll take off the arm cover. And really, I think that's mostly so when you go to put the regulator back in the machine and assemble it, you can reach in here and reach some of the parts to hold it, because it can be a little tricky. Then the other thing you want to do is the feed regulator hinge screw is down in here behind the hand wheel. Whoops. So we have to take the hand wheel off of the machine to get to that screw. And normally how soft or hard, easy or hard this is to move up and down is set by how far you turn in that screw. And it's got some kind of a tension spring or tension washer on it, so that once you set how you like the feel for you say, oh yeah, that's perfect. The spring or tension washer keeps it there. And if this hinge screw is too loose, you can get what's called creep. And as you're sewing, it'll start creeping up or usually down and start changing the length of your stitch. And that's usually because this hinge screw is too loose. So you get what's called a feed regulator screw stud creep. Kind of starts creeping down on you from the vibration, slowly but surely. So you start sewing, and you know, a half hour later you're looking at your stitches like, hey, I thought I was sewing at 12 stitches per inch, and these look like 8 or 6, and they could be. So anyway, let's take the hand wheel off, We have to do it by backing out or removing completely the stop motion stop set screw. It's this little screw that tells the stop motion knob where to stop when you're releasing tension to wind the bobbin. But by taking that screw out, there is no stop, so you can just turn it left and you can remove the stop motion. It's actually called a screw. We call it a knob, but look, it's threaded. It's actually called a screw. And behind that fell off here, but what is in there is a stop motion clamp washer. And that's what the little stop screw hits, is one of these 3 tabs that sticks up. So when you tighten it, this screw ends up between tabs, and when you loosen it to the left, it comes down and it hits one of those tabs and stops the screw from turning. And it's enough to release pressure on the clamp so the hand wheel will turn from the motor belt, but nothing else on the machine works. So you just wind the bobbin with the hand wheel and the motor. When you take that off, put those in my little parts bit here, then you can pull the hand wheel straight off the end of the horizontal arm shaft. And on this model, these are real heavy. This is triple plated chrome steel, and then this is steel or iron. It's very heavy. So be careful when you take these off. They're very easy to fall. Now, down inside here is the hinge screw sitting in there like that. And you can't, on this machine it's pretty far in there and you're not going to be able to see it. So I'm going to have to take a picture with a light or something in there and get a close-up so you can see what it looks like from this end. And then I'm going to insert that picture right here in the video. Okay, so that's where you have to put a big screwdriver in there and get it in the end of that hinge screw and turn it left to loosen or right to tighten. And that's what changes the pressure. So as a matter of fact, let me try that right now, because sometimes if this is just too hard to move or too easy and you're getting creep, this is all you have to do. And I don't know, it's that far in from my fingertips. This is where the slot of the screw is. Now they're not all that way, but this one is. So, and this can be in there pretty good if you got to spray it with oil or WD-40 or warm it up with a hair dryer or something. Don't be surprised. But if you turn it left, it loosens. There, you just saw it so loose now. See? So if it's partially tightened, like, it'll stay there, but as the machine starts vibrating a little bit, it'll slowly creep down. So that is too loose, right? It has to be tight enough that it will stay where you put it without moving. But you don't want it so tight that it's hard to move it. When it's real stiff to move, you can have trouble setting it exactly where you want it. So let me tighten it up a little bit, and this is much better. I mean, it's still firm. It's not going to give me any creep, but it's much more movable. It's much more manageable. Just more like normal moderate pressure to move it around. And wherever I move it, it's going to stay. So if that was the only problem, I'd be done. Now, if if the spring or tension washer on it is broken, you're not going to be able to tighten it very well at all. You're going to tighten it, and this is still going to have creep or be too loose. And in this case, I have to do something with this turned little points that help me lock it in on the indicator plate, because they're like I said, they're up and down, they're not side to side, so I can't really lock a stitch in on this machine. So on some machines like the 404, if you see those videos, there is an actual indicator plate here like this that you just take off. On these later machines in the 60s and 70s, they put this big cover plate to kind of cover, and the light, instead of being here, the light is in the back, attached to the back. On this one, some of them, the light is built in here underneath. So for all these openings, they made a big cover plate just to cover everything. And this cover plate is like several others. It's got screws and it's got little clips. Because on the back of this, there's a couple of plastic pins molded into it that go through, and you put a clip on the back of it to hold it firm besides the screws. This has 4 screws, and they look like this. They're little gold colored aluminum screws, and that's all they do is screw in. The holes in the machine casting are threaded at these 4 points, so you just take out all those screws. Then there's going to be 2 of these pins sticking through the body. Let's see if we can go back here and maybe you can see one. I got a pointer here. I think you might be able to see this pin right here. Sticking through. And then the other one is way down in here, where this finger's going, about that far in. Okay, and I've already taken the, of course you saw I took the screws out, but let me show you these little clips. They're kind of like a clip washer. They have 3 little ears or tabs on the outside, and on the inside they have 3 little tabs that go and pinch onto that plastic post. Okay, so you'll see them in there. They'll be stuck on that plastic post, kind of like that, and they'll be pressed up against the body on the inside. And the way that I've always taken them off is to get 1 or 2 small screwdrivers in there and get it against the body and behind that clip and start twisting the screwdriver so it slowly pushes that clip off of the plastic. And if you happen to damage these so bad that they won't work, I feel confident that the hardware store will have some kind of a circlip or washer clip or tension clip, something like this, that you could use for a replacement. But if you're careful, I mean, I've taken dozens of these off without breaking any. So if you're just careful, sometimes it's good to have 2 screwdrivers so you can kind of put one on each side of the clip, and you kind of twist out the right side a little. If you have a screwdriver here, twist out the left. If you go back and forth with one screwdriver, it will work, But what happens is you push out on the back side, and then the front side wants to push back towards the machine. You know, so then you push that out, and the other side wants to. So if you have a couple screwdrivers, it's even better. And there's probably some fancy tools, or, you know, I don't know, maybe a staple remover would pull it right off if you can get it in there. But you need to get those two clips off. You know, if you take out the screws, the cover plate's not going to come off. And if you see cover plates that are cracked and damaged, it's probably because somebody tried to pull it off without. And look, this adjusting thumb nut is bigger than the slot in the indicator plate. So you're not going to pull it out past that. Right? So the best thing is to turn this all the way left, which will bring it as far away as you can from the cover plate, and then lift this off. And sometimes you watch up here at these levers and fingertips controls, and just make sure they don't get hung up there, and you can bring the cover plate off. Like I said, most of these, the slot's not big enough to pull it over the adjusting thumb nut, but you can at least get it this far. Okay, and then you're exposing some of this other stuff, but I'm going to have to take the whole thing out. So I'm going to go into this hinge screw back here, and I'm going to loosen it pretty good. Then you could take it out, and it can drop, and it'll probably drop through to the bottom. But someplace here I have one of those split screwdrivers, right? So I'm going to try and get it in there and press it forward so that it holds the screw. So this is really handy when you're putting it back in, I'll tell you that. Did you see that fall away now? So now I've got the hinge screw all the way out. And that's what the hinge screw looks like. And this doesn't have a spring. It has like a tension washer. And you see it's like it's kind of like a little saucer shaped. It's not perfectly flat. It's a little curved on one side and sticks out on the other, like a saucer for a teacup. Okay, and the side that sticks up in the center goes over the hinge screw to rest against the head of the screw, and the cup part that sticks out around the side faces the regulator so that it can push up against it, and that's what creates tension. So once you adjust it, it stays where you adjust it. This uses a big spring, and this uses a tension washer. And by the way, look at the difference in those hinge screws, right? A 1960s Rocketeer and a 1970s model 237 Fashion Mate. Industrial age and the age of Aquarius. But you'll see the regulator is almost the same. Now that I have the hinge screw and washer out, I can just hold on to this adjusting thumb nut and just pull it right out of the machine. Okay? And I've just slid it right off of that slide block that's on the forked feed connection, right? There it is. So doesn't that look familiar? Let me take this hinge screw off of the Rocketeer one, and we'll take a look at it. The same same principle. This, of course, is a little smaller because we're saving monies by the 1970s. And it doesn't have a set screw that holds in the screw stud anymore. But it does have a little tension spring. So that's cheaper than a screw stud, right? Okay. Now, these can get bent, these screw studs. And even people can bend them when they're loosening this, and it's very stuck or hard, and they force it, and this screw stud will come down on the bottom and bend. So that's why if the hinge screw in here is stubborn and doesn't feel like it wants to turn, put some penetrating oil or liquid wrench or WD-40, spray a little on it from here, and you can go in from the top of the machine. You can go in from up here, and you can see the forked feed connection and the where's that forked feed connection, and the block, the slide block, and everything. And you can spray a little bit in here, and you can spray a little bit, you know, there, and get that loose so you don't damage the screw stud while you're taking it out. Once you have it like this, all I've got to do is turn it, because then I can have my little pins or triangle, instead of facing up and down, I can turn them horizontal, like so that then when I tighten the thumb nut, it actually will hit against the indicator plate and hold it from moving. So before, the little white pins were turned up and down like that, and I'm going to turn them horizontal. So somebody probably had this off and, you know, didn't realize that that's what those are. And if you have a damaged screw stud or a broken spring, or you want to change a thumb nut, somebody grabbed a hold of it with a pair of pliers and smashed it all up. Once it's open like this, you can usually remove the screw stud pretty easily, because you can put some penetrating spray in here and in here, and you can get this loose to the point that, come on, don't make a liar out of me, that you can take it out. Now remember, this one did not have a set screw. Can we see that yet? Let me turn that nut in. Nope, still can't see it yet. This one didn't have a set screw holding that screw stud into the regulator, so it's just going to screw right out. See that? Then here's the little tension screw spring, like on the Singer Model 99, that helps the screw stud stay in and pushes the indicator plate into the stop piece. So there's your little spring, right? There's the regulator, right? Okay, like so. Then here's the little, surprised me, but it's a little nylon plastic piece with the little arrows that should be horizontal on the machine. And then here is the screw stud that's put right through the thumb nut. So with this off, if you had a bent screw or a damaged thumb nut, you can just hold the screw and just keep turning that right, And here is the screw stud. See that big old head on it? And you can just unscrew that and take it right off. So I have seen it where these are damaged, like on the 404 and the Rocketeer. This is threaded, but what holds it in place is this set screw. So it goes in there and then the screw tightens, and that's what holds the lever in place. On this 237, you actually put the little spring over the screw stud and you screw it in, and you screw it in all the way as far as it'll go, and that's what keeps it in place. Okay, so now we've got the whole thing taken apart here. We've got the cover plate off. We've got the feed regulator out and off of the slide block of the forked feed connection. We've got the screw stud and the adjusting thumb nut off, and we've got the little screw stud spring, tension spring, off, and we've got the little stop piece, what I call it, nylon stop piece. And then we've got the hinge screw with the little tension washer that goes on there. So that's all the parts of the feed regulator system. Now in here, you know what, I'm going to take a picture now and I'll show you. You will see this, sorry, in here is the fork feed connection and the slide block, and this slide block is spinning real easy the way this one should, but I'll show you a picture of what that looks like, where this you know, slides onto it like that, because that's what you have to do when you put it back in. You have to slide it back on that block, and then you've got to come from the end and put in the side the hinge screw, and you've got to put, you know, the screw stud and all that. So let me take a picture of this, okay? Okay, so you've seen how it looks through the end, where you have to go in to get to the hinge screw to adjust it or remove it, and you've seen how it looks inside with the slide block, and when you go to put it back in, you can put your finger in from the top and you can hold that slide block in place a little bit while you're sliding this on. So I'll show you how to put it back together now, because you really have to assemble it around the cover plate, right? Because you can't get this through the slot, so you kind of have to put that part of it back together and hold it on the outside the way I pulled it off, and you have to stick it back in and slide it on that slide block, and then tighten it up, adjust it, and put all the screws and the clip washers and everything back on there. So I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so to put this back together, we're going to reassemble part of it here, and we'll put the screw stud. It takes about 50 turns. We'll put it back into through the thumb nut, the adjusting thumb nut. Get that in there. Now, I think both sides of this, they're all equal. The top and the bottom, I don't think, as long as the little arrows or pins are sticking out horizontally, that's what we've got to do when we put it in. It's like that, it goes like this. And we've got to get the tension spring back on here. Now that's going to go through the faceplate like that. And I've got my indicators out here horizontally. Now I get the actual feed regulator and the how I want to describe that. The hole for the hinge screw goes down on the bottom like this. And of course the slide has to face left. The slot here to go into the slide, because the feed fork connection will be on the left side of this. Sorry, kind of fumbly here, but let's get that started. Then I've got to get my screwdriver down in there on that screw stud. That doesn't feel like I'm just turning the, I'm just turning the thumb. Maybe I should back that out a little bit so I can get more in there. That's a good idea. Get a little better light on here. Yeah, I think I'm getting the hang of it here now. So I've got this, the faceplate's upside down. Oh, the faceplate's upside down. Uh-oh. Can I turn that? Yeah. Whew. Okay. So with the slide on my left and the horizontal arrows like that, that's how I've got to tighten it. Then you can tighten this screw all the way in to the feed regulator. So you want to make sure it's screwed in tight. Now that's how it's going to look when you're ready to put it back on the machine. Okay? So let's get this up here. When you look inside here, you can see that slide block, and I can just get my fingertip on it to kind of hold it, because it's on a hinge screw, so it just wants to swing all over the place. And that's what you don't want. So you want to hold it while you slide the regulator back on it. Okay. Turn this horizontal. Get this. So I got my little things horizontal there. It's real easy to forget that, and then you get it all back together and you say, oh, because now I've got to come in from the side over here and get this hinge screw back in there. And that's another place that this spring screwdriver has really helped, because I can, I can hold the screw there. Now when you look in here, you remember to turn the shaft or the arm so that feed fork connection is out of the way to your left, and you'll see the hole in the housing where to get the screw started into that. But it has to go through the housing and into this regulator. And you've got to push or pull that regulator and manipulate around a little bit to get the hole lined up. And see what I did? I tried to pull it out a little bit, and I pulled it right off the slide block. So let me get this back around here and get it open. Alright, I can slide it up in there. Again, go in and hold that. My fingers are getting greasy and dirty from that, and I'm getting it all over my machine that I cleaned. I'm going to try and gently pull it forward about 1/8 of an inch and see if I can get this. I know that the regulator always seems low. I remember this before from the other machine. And what you have to kind of do is keep this at the bottom, but point it up, kind of lift the regulator up on the end of the screw stud, and inside you'll see the hole in the regulator line up with the screw hole in the casting, and then you'll be able to put this screw in. So let's see what I've got. Okay, that's a little bit loose, but I want to get at least a couple of these little bitty screws in here to hold this in place so that it's not flopping around on me. And I was sure this time to get that little nylon stop piece with the tabs or arrows or points on there horizontally this time. So now if I go in here and dial that in, the thumb nut will push those little tabs into the indicator plate and then lock it in there now. So I can go up to reverse, but come down, it'll stop where I locked it. And that's exactly what you need to, that's what those little tabs on there are for. Alright, let me just go put one over here. And you can put the clips on the back, or you can put the screws in first. I just like to get a couple of these screws in so the plate is up there and it's not going to be flopping around or anything. So now that I replaced the broken part or cleaned it or replaced the spring, now I want to adjust it by tightening that hinge screw to the point that gives me the amount of resistance on the lever that I like. And if your lever ever gets loose or you change your mind, you can always pop the hand wheel off and just do this adjustment. You know, you don't need to take the whole thing apart like I did. If there's nothing wrong in there, if this is just tight, you can go in there and oil it and adjust it. Yeah, that feels pretty good. That feels pretty good. Okay, I'm wondering if I can show you how to put these clips back on the plastic post inside. Let's see if I can get something here to lay the machine down on the front. I get a block over here. Poor Stella, huh? I got greasy fingerprints all over her. Drop my camera down here. So with this tab or post, when I put these clips on, you can just kind of get them started pushing on there, and then I usually take a pair of needle nose and slide them on. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see, these tabs on the outside don't come off flat. They're like a little bent one way, a little curled, and that little bend part should go against the wall of the machine. They sure were a lot easier to get off than to get them back on here. I think if, oh good, okay. So I held one of the outside tabs down and then pushed on the other opposite side of it, and I got it there. Whee! I got it on there. It's not completely tight, but almost. So I'm going to support it here underneath so I don't crack the cover plate, and see if I can't press it down on there with my needle nose on those tabs, because it did hold it securely there. Okay, so that's good. That's tight. So I think that was the secret with these, was I put it, I get the curl down, I put it on the post, and then I kind of held this one side of the tab with the finger like that, and then I pushed down on the actual washer, not the outside tab on the other side, that little angle, and then it went on about halfway. Once it started, it slipped on good, and now just pressing it down flush with the machine is holding it nice and tight. Let's look at the front here and see. Besides all the dirty fingerprints now. Yeah. So when I put in the other two screws, and then there's another clip, that deep one, that will keep this plate on, cover plate, nice and firm. It won't be rattling around or anything like that. Now I just want to show you, for those that don't know how, about putting the hand wheel back on. Okay, you're going to put this stop motion clamp back on the horizontal arm, and you see these center tabs are bent, and you want you want them kind of bent towards you, and you got a 50-50 chance of getting it right when you put it on, for how it lines up with the stop screw. So just pick one way to get it on there, and whoops, we got to put the hand wheel on. Sorry. Slide the hand wheel back on. Now if you want, you can put a little bit of oil, like a drop, or if this is dirty, you're going to have to clean it, you know, with alcohol or crud cutter. If you want to put a drop or maybe two of oil on the outside for this to spin, you know, you can do that. If you put a lot of oil, it's going to kind of stick to the shaft and turn it even when you're trying to wind the bobbin. So don't over oil it. And we'll put this, and you can try it like, see those ears go in the cutouts here on the end of the arm, and you can try it with the one point up, or you can try it with the, like the cat they call it, with the two ears up. But it really depends when you screw this on, it depends where this hole ends up, if it's going to work. Then carefully start your stop motion screw. And get it, go back a little to get it started. And if your washer slips off, don't let it hang. You go take this off and go put the washer back on. And I can tell right now the washer's not going to work for me, because right behind that screw is one of those 3 tabs. So I'm going to take that off, and where I had it kind of like the cat ears up, I'm going to turn it how I originally had it and put the single tab up and start this back in here again. Because when you put the stop motion screw on, the hole for the stop screw should be kind of like halfway between 2 of those tabs. That's how you can be able to, whoop, slipped off. That's how you can be able to, let me tilt this back a little bit, put it up on this towel. Then I think it'll be less likely to slip off here. So what you want to do is, when you end up, is this hole for the screw is like halfway between any 2 of the 3. So when you go this way, it has room to tighten, but when you go back, the stop screw hits one of these and stops turning. So get it back on here. Okay. See, so I have one of those tabs was at the top, right? And the other 2 are down here. So this is in between these 2. So I know it's going to work good for me. So let me put the stop screw back in there and we'll test it. But I already know, without putting this screw in, that it ended up in the right place. And I'll show you how to test it and stuff. I know many of my viewers know how to do this in their sleep, but there's always new people, new to the machine, or new to Singer, or new to crafting and sewing, that want to learn this. So okay, when you hold the hand wheel and turn the stop motion screw to the right, you clamp down on that clamp, and that makes the connection. And so when the motor turns the hand wheel, you're turning the feed and the needle bar. Okay, and then when you want to stop that motion, you hold the hand wheel, turn the stop motion knob left, and you hear it stop when that screw hits that tab. Now the motor can turn the hand wheel to run the tire, to run the bobbin, but the feed and the needle don't move. Yay, so we got that right. And now we've got our feed regulator adjusted, or our stitch length regulator, as they call it on this model. It's all adjusted and the parts are all good and it's clean. Let's see if my lock works. Lock it in about 12. Yep, nice and locked in, so it won't go down, but it does go to reverse, and it'll go to reverse exactly at 12 in reverse. Then when I want to sew forward, I just push it till it stops, and it'll come back to where we tightened it, right? So that's the other advantage. If you have this open, not locked, and if you're sewing at 12, and if you just flip it all the way up, you won't be back tacking at 12. You'll probably be back tacking at a different stitch length. But whatever you lock in here forward, not only does it keep it there, but when you go up to reverse, it's going to keep it in that same range. So even your back tack will look equal. I know that putting that regulator back on that slide is a real pain. But just be patient. If you do have to take it off, many of my viewers have done it. And a lot of them have even said, oh, it wasn't as bad as you made it look. Which is good, right? Thanks for watching. If you know of a little tool to put those little clips on somehow easier, let us know. Wasn't too bad though. I think that's why this one only has 2 outside tabs. Somebody broke one off getting it off before. See you next time. I hope you come back. Take care.